Thank you, Mr Liu. Mr Berger.
President, and I rise to speak on the State Taxation Amendment Bill 2024. This bill looks at the issues facing Victoria today and takes decisive action on how to help tackle the big problems of the 21st century. Whether it be building more homes, and I have seen it firsthand, as you know, my colleague in this place, Minister Shing, in her capacity as Minister for Housing, has seen as well. And Acting President, we have seen the work the Allan Labor government has done to build modern housing in my community, Paran, at Bang Street, just a couple of 100 metres down from my electoral office. And this bill also tackles climate change and helps protect our environment and makes the appropriate changes to our taxation system to ensure we're best equipped to address these problems. The purpose of this bill to implement 3 tax-related changes that were made as part of the 2024-2025 Allan Labor government budget. They are: 1, exempt social and emergency housing from land tax; 2, harmonise our laws with our friends in New South Wales and across the border in South Australia; 3, establish a trust to support Trust for Nature to set up more conservation covenants on privately owned land in Metro. Acting President, despite what those on the other side say, we want the people of Victoria to think this bill delivers sound economic reforms to Victorians. And as I've said many times in this chamber, I'm sure by this time the hard-working Hansard staff who work day in, day out diligently recording my words and have memorised what I say about this, but I'll say it again anyway. The Allan Labor government has cut or reduced taxes in this state around 64 times since coming into office, which is more than I can say about the opposition when they were in power. But thankfully for Victoria's sake, it was only 4 years in the past 25. But nevertheless, the opposition increased taxes or fees in this state 24 times in their 4 years if they were in charge. But still, they sit here and complain about any changes to the tax system, even though they did it. Have a look at this bill. People will see just how the opposition is voting against here. For example, there are clear provisions for social and emergency housing to be exempted from the vacant residential land tax. The opposition love talking about taxes in Victoria, but when the opportunity comes to cut them for something as basic as social housing, they sit here with their arms folded. And Acting President, they love raising taxes, and I hope you tell your rank and file members what you've been up to. These common sense changes to land tax on close inspection are a recognition of what needs to be done to ease the cost of living pressures of Victorians, and particularly on housing. Boosting the state's housing supply is essential to making sure more Victorians can have access to a home. Boosting the numbers of social and affordable housing is a key to fixing these problems, which is why the Allan Labor government is building more of them under the Big Build, as outlined in the housing statement. The Big Housing Build is Australia's biggest ever investment in public and community housing, with $5.3 billion going directly to these projects, and it's all happening here in Victoria. That's 12,000 more social and affordable homes for Victorians, doing it tough under these plans, with over 700 more on the way with the Commonwealth's Social Housing Accelerator. There are more serious investments happening right now. It only makes sense that we exempt these types of properties from residential vacancy land tax to help encourage the construction of more housing in the state that houses people in need of an affordable price. Just down my road in the electorate on Bang Street, the state government built 445 social and affordable homes. We got it done. Only the Labor governments are committed to supporting projects like Bang Street housing by ensuring social and emergency housing projects are exempt from the vacant residency tax and should expect more social housing to be built in this state, supported by a dedicated community ready to invest and a government that backs them in. Ultimately, we're the governments that's building social housing, and those opposite are the ones who want to tax it. We all know Victoria needs more homes to fit our growing population. By some estimates, Melbourne alone should expect to have a population of 8 million by 2050. If you were sitting opposite, I'd reckon you could take this to the bank, because we're all saying it's just last sitting week that the Victorian Liberals would rather those new homes to be built in New South Wales or Queensland. I've never seen a bigger bunch of cheerleaders for another state selling Victorians out like they did last sitting week, attacking our tourism industry. It's not a question of if we need more housing, it's undeniably the reality. Building more social housing is essential to our growing city, and we're making these investments in Victoria's future. Melbourne's population will grow to 8 million in the next few decades, regardless of what the opposition says, and we all need more affordable homes to meet that. But it's not just social housing the opposition are standing against, it's opposing this bill. And this bill, which will also exclude emergency housing from the tax. Again, these are common sense reforms which will spur investment in housing, especially in emergency housing for the people that need it the most. But after all that, the opposition in the other place decided that they would vote against lifting the 1% levy off emergency housing and social housing after a debate where they droned on about how high taxes are. We need to build more homes in Victoria, especially emergency and social housing. Lifting the tax off these projects by exempting them from the levy will incentivise more investment into those homes in Victoria and ensure more people can rely on emergency housing when they need it. Those opposite aren't interested in building more social and affordable homes in Victoria because they're not about backing in Victorians. They're just about saying no. This bill also includes changes to the waste levy across the state, making modest changes to the metropolitan and regional rates to help encourage more environmentally friendly practices by the state's largest waste producers. It's a good measure in which will help protect our environment, help meet our emissions targets by encouraging changes in waste disposal behaviour. And as I've said before, the proposal will also harmonise our waste levy with our border states. This is about protecting our environment. It's about fighting climate change. The Chamber knows that the Allan Labor government has one of the most ambitious climate targets in the world. We have a goal of cutting our emissions by up to 50% by 2030 and to reach net zero by 2045, meaning we'll be meeting our targets alongside world leaders like Germany or California. We're serious about tackling our measures to reduce waste by promoting recycling and reuse through the change in the waste levy. Coupled with our investment into our waste management system, we can meet our targets and protect our environment. We have a target of diverting up to 80% of Victoria's waste product away from landfills by 2030 to complement those targets, and this change in waste levy will help the state move towards that greener future. While some of those opposites might protest the levy, it's worth remembering that this levy is for and why it's in place. The levy in its original form came into the picture in the early 1990s as a way of discouraging landfill waste by attaching a price to the dumping practices of these large waste-producing companies. We encourage companies to invest and innovate and how they manage their waste. We encourage Victorians to find a new way to recycle, to reuse and improve disposing practices. Despite this, nearly 2/3 of Victorians' waste-related emissions today come from landfills, primarily in the form of methane and carbon dioxide. This illustrates how important the management of our waste is, as landfills just emit more and more emissions and harm our environment more as we dump it away into these sites. While the amount of waste we produce has significantly fallen since the 1990s, we have introduced the levy. We need to do more if we want to fight climate change and protect our natural environment from damage and the hands of the waste that we could be avoiding producing. That's why the then Andrews Labor government invested $515 million into delivering reform after reform, including the reform our state's waste management system yet, helping us move towards a circular economy on recycling as laid out in our Recycling Victoria plan. To help our transition along, we issued $84 million worth of grants and improved waste management. Supported by the Commonwealth Government's $40 million investment, we thank them for that as well. The Allan Labor government is committed to meeting our climate targets of net zero carbon emissions by 2045, and it's important that our push towards that we include changes to waste management such as this levy increase. Changes in the waste levy will help encourage Victorians to waste less and recycle more by encouraging our state's largest waste producers to do more when it comes to reusing, recycling and reducing waste and so forth. By harmonising our metropolitan levy and proportionally raising the regional levy, we can make sure that we are not leaving any Victorians behind as we push towards a greener future which protects our environment and tackles climate change through these changes. We can help the state meet the landfill waste reduction target of 80% and our goal of cutting per capita waste generation across Victoria by 15% by 2030. This is a rational and reasoned measure that will deliver better protections for our environment. It will cut our emissions and better manage our waste disposal system. It's a modest increase in the waste levy to ensure that we are doing our part to fight climate change by reducing our waste output, and we will be doing it over time. We will increase it from 1st of July 2025, giving partners in businesses, local council and the community time to adjust. The waste levy will also increase from Category C and Category D to $169.79 per tonne on the 1st of July 2025. And the rates for all other categories of priority waste will be unchanged. And we are doing this all after consultation because we want to encourage the safe disposal, the continued safe disposal of hazardous waste materials. Overall, we want less waste dumped at landfill, and that is what the changes help us achieve. And it's about behaviour so that the big waste producers can create less waste and do more. We want communities to reduce, reuse and recycle. This government's efforts to cut emissions and reduce waste in favour of recycling has gained wide interest and support. Our investments in waste management reform itself is estimated to have, as of last year's, attracted over $254 million from the private sector to help our economy pivot towards a circular economy that works hard to cut waste and recycle materials as much as possible. This proposed change to the waste levy fits in that tradition. I'll encourage these big waste producers not just to dump their waste into landfill after landfill, but instead encourage them to invest in innovation solutions to lower their waste. They'll be incentivised to focus on how they can recycle more, how they can reuse whatever they are dumping, and reduce their waste throughput. And we're investing in that. Take the revenue drawn from the landfill levy, it will go directly into Victorians' environmental agencies. The EPA, Sustainability Victoria and Recycling Victoria will all feel the benefit of this increased levy, helping build a greener and more sustainable Victoria. We are a government that is serious about climate change, serious about waste management reform and serious about reducing population pollution and protecting our environment. Acting President, we'll hear lots, I'm sure, from the opposition about taxes, tax rises, tax reform and taxes. But let me just point out that every time this government has proposed an amendment to the state's taxation arrangements, no matter how positive that change, it blocks. It happened last year, it happens every year. They know the exemption for social emergency housing from vacant residential land tax will help build more homes, something only a Labor government will achieve. They'll know it'll have to go on to those who need it most, but they will still oppose it. They know that this government is doing the right thing, and they know that we're making the right calls on waste management, and they know that this government has encouraged private investment, but still they oppose it. It's about making sure we encourage more investment, so more interested into social and affordable housing on top of the $5.3 billion investment from this side of the chamber. Before I wrap up today, this bill will also make a variety of changes that will not have the time to go into more detail, but I wanted to highlight a few in particular. It amends the Duties Act 2000 to add new classes of business insurance to the insurance duty provisions, which will be eligible for a gradual reduction in duty to provide a future change to the classes of business insurance. It also amends the Gambling Taxation Act 2023 to provide a commissioner with the power to compel a casino operator to produce a document or information on a prospective basis for a period of up to 6 months. And we know how important that reform in gambling is. It also tidies up the Payroll Tax 2007, the Land Tax 2005 and the Planning Environment Act 1987 and the Taxation Administration Act 1997. With that last one, I will note its importance adding further criminal liabilities on the officers of a casino operator. Thank you.